And now, Giant Sports Talk Live. Here are your hosts, Eric and Glenn.
Hey guys, welcome into another edition of your postseason Giant Sports Talk Live. Well, we don't have much Giants to talk about, but boy, there are some great series underway. Yesterday, you had Detroit and Cleveland, Kansas City at New York, getting underway this afternoon. We've got Philadelphia in Flushing, Eric, to take on the Mets and the Dodgers. Oh boy, we want to see the Dodgers lose. They're playing in San Diego. Oh, Giants Kingdom hate Los Angeles. And lately, it seems, Eric, that L.A. hates L.A. They were fighting among themselves and beating them up in the parking lot and the parkades. And oh, it was great. I love to see it.
It's a circus, man. It's a body.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, we got guys dropping into the show already. As we welcome them in, we've got Chris in. Chris is in Detroit. You see him there on the look at that handsome face joining us, man. He's looking us, making us look bad, Eric. Glad to have him in today. Chris was a long time not play-by-play, but in-stadium announcer, public address announcer for the Detroit Tigers. Chris, welcome into the show, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. And if you think this is a handsome face, you must have some crazy filter going on your end, Glenn. I don't see it. Thank you.
I got the bubbles glasses on. Maybe I'll have to. Is that you? Hey, boys. All right. Well, like I say, you know what it's like to hang out at the Tiger games. You've gotten to see them grow, if you will. You did some games this year with the club. You've seen what has transpired. So Eric and I look at the standings almost each and every day. We recap the games and go, where the hell did this Detroit Tiger team come from? How did they build what they've got right now?
I wish any of us really, really knew the answer to that, because we would bottle it and sell it on eBay like tomorrow. But, we've been hearing for years all these names that were supposed to be coming through the system, and they were starting to trickle in this year. Colt Keith, some of the young pitchers in that, but they just, the young guys that they had brought up had showed promise previously, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, but they were certainly kind of stuck in we're still figuring it out mode. And boy, something happened in mid-August, because there wasn't really much hint of it before that. You might have a good outing here. Somebody might have a 3 for 4 or 4 for 5 and hit a couple of dingers, or we got a couple speedy guys on the base pass. But there was really not much that would make you feel like this is the beginning of something, special, which it ended up being. So, I don't know if it is just that's a recipe for success, kind of moving on. It's the getting hot right at the end. I know Atlanta did it the year that they won the World Series. I know that Texas and Arizona did it last year to creep in, the two wild cards that played for the title. And even, the Florida Panthers, the season before, they were the last team to get in, and they went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. So there is something about just, I guess, holding your feet to the fire and needing to put yourself in a position where there's no margin for error. And in some cases, it works out. And, knock wood, that's kind of what's going on in Detroit right now.
Face of the franchise, of course, is your starting pitcher. Look like you've got a Cy Young Award winner over there, buddy.
We do, and he has been so fun to watch. And, maybe even a year ago, he was still coming back from an injury, and 9th round pick. And I don't know that he would have been anybody's, dartboard choice to be the guy to watch, coming into the end of 2023 and maybe 2024. But he really, really put it together the last couple of months last year. And he is a bulldog. He's everything you want in an ace. He is ornery. You can see how they're fidgeting when he thinks he got squeezed a little bit on the corners, and then he takes it out on the next batters. So I'm glad to see that the rest of the country, is experiencing what we've been getting to enjoy here for the last 14 months with him.
Yeah, Tarik Skubal, tremendous pitcher. I mean, face of a franchise over there for
Absolutely.
you. Chris Butzlaff is our guest. He is a longtime public address announcer, hanging out there in Detroit watching some Tiger baseball. Eric, take it away.
I tell you what, you're talking about Tarik, man. There's something else I like about him. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Madison Bumgarner. He's kind of like a little bit of a red ass, right? I like that. He's competitive. When his guys were getting those key double plays, I mean, that was honestly, that's what sealed the deal for them. he had that fantastic defense behind him. He got that ground ball when he needed it. Even though he's a strikeout pitcher, man, he knew what he needed to do. And when he was coming off the mound, man, he let people know, hey, this is awesome. And I like it. I like seeing that stuff. A little bit different than what Rodon did yesterday. You know, after a strikeout, he was trying to celebrate after every strikeout, but Tarik didn't do that. It was after the inning. Once it was all said and done, you know, and it was awesome to watch him do that. And it's crazy because the talk at the trade deadline was, are they going to move off of him? What are they going to get back for Skubal? Because everyone thought, you know, Detroit was dead in the water. Maybe the decision not trading him, maybe reinvigorated the team and said, hey, maybe we could do this. Maybe we got to run in this. What'd you make of that, them not being able to trade him at the trade deadline?
You know, that was probably the most popular rumor in all of baseball right around those weeks leading up to it. And here in Detroit, you know, they were trying to sell us on the fact that we could get, you know, a king's ransom back for him.
Right.
But the problem is we haven't really had a pitcher of his ilk since Scherzer left 10 years before. You may get a ton of picks back, but there's no saying, no guaranteeing that you got another Skubal, you know, waiting in the wind for you. So I was so happy because that's a guy you can, you know, we were spoiled here for a while with Verlander. It seemed like every year we faced the A's and one of the, you know, the DS or the CS of the playoffs. And we knew if it came down to a deciding game, we had Verlander ready to go. And that was when he dominated the playoff rounds. You know, I know he struggled for a while in the World Series games, but in the playoffs, he was just lights out. And so that's what we were kind of all hoping is that, hey, it's nice to get a lot of the guys back. We've been waiting on a lot of young guys that they say are going to come up and make the difference. But boy, if you've already got one here, you know, don't go letting it be, you know, the Orioles' good fortune or the Dodgers' good fortune to get him. And I'm so glad that we hung on to him. And you know, the upper brass kind of came out and said, we were never really looking to trade him. That's what, you know, all the rest of Major League Baseball was wanting to talk. I understand why.
Nice. And you know what? You're talking about the upper brass, and I find it interesting because your guys is I don't know how you guys label them. Is it president of baseball operations or it's GM? You guys got Scott Harris.
Yes.
Who was the former GM under Farhan here in San Francisco. So it's interesting. This is only his second year, right? I think this is his second year.
Yes. Yep.
Lo and behold, he's got his team in the playoffs. I find that very interesting. You know, again, Giants were kind of salty, you know, with the years that we had under Farhan. It was just, It was a disaster. And with Scott Harris, though, look what he's doing. I like what he's doing as far as, you know, leading his team, putting together, you know, and in a trade deadline, you guys didn't buy or sell, right? If I'm not mistaken. Well, no, you sold Urshela, right? I think you guys got rid of Urshela.
We got Flaherty, sent him over to the Dodgers.
That's right.
There were a couple minor pieces here and there, but not, you know, Flaherty was the big one that kind of went. And, you know, it's interesting. I think it was, you know, maybe yesterday or the day before is that I'd heard AJ Hinch say that, you know, the greatest thing about Skubal is that he gets the other 25 guys on the roster to believe they are winning that day when he takes them out. Yeah, so I mean that's invaluable having that sort of confidence, you know, just driving into the ballpark.
And your minor league system really was a part of this whole development of a brand new franchise now. And you know, with losing will come winning. How have the fans taken all these new names? Because when Eric and I look, we don't cover the American League in depth, maybe as much as we should. The show is called Giants Sports Talk Live. So we talk a lot about the Western Division and the National League. But as we looked at the lineup, I'm like, Eric, who's this guy? Who's this guy? And even we're seeing that. We're seeing guys contributing in the postseason that I don't know a whole lot about.
No, and you know, some of these guys we weren't even really expecting to come up here. And I would say, you know, aside from Skubal, I think Riley Green is maybe somewhere on the national radar. But you know, I mean, we had some bad luck, and we had a couple of, you know, first overall picks, you know, in the span of about 5 years that definitely kind of went through their struggles. Casey Mize had injuries, and he's coming back. And he was, you know, always pegged to be the better pitcher than Skubal. And then, you know, Spencer Torkelson, he struggled. You know, it's kind of well known that he struggled his first season. The second year, he ended up with like 31 home runs on the back half, and then he struggled again this year, and they sent him down to AAA. So we've heard these names, and it seems like that they were right in the projections. You know, as far as who to watch for in a couple of years. I know they just brought Jackson Jobe up, and he was, the second overall prospect, and they gave him 4 innings to pitch before the playoffs, and they started him, or they brought him into relief, a pretty tough high leverage situation in Houston. So they got him prepped for it. They're saying, you guys, you're coming up here. It's not just to hit fungos. You're going to get out there and you're going to be counted on. And everybody has kind of thrived in that situation so far.
His name is Chris Butzlaff, PA announcer, longtime PA announcer for the Detroit Tigers, joining us on the show. Eric, why don't you take the next one?
I like what you're talking about. You're talking about AJ Hinch, and it's crazy. Within 12 years, you went from Jimmy Leland, right, old school manager, to AJ Hinch, who, is kind of more in the analytics maybe. But again, he still also has that eye as well. And it's crazy how these teams are totally different. It's funny, in 2012, it's almost like that team was put together in the type of baseball that is done today. The home run, the walk, the strikeout. But the team now, it seems, it's all about just getting that key hit, manufacturing runs. Oh, it's okay to get that long ball, especially yesterday from Tarik Carpenter. Oh, my God, that was just incredible. I mean, Class A, who would have thought Class A coming in, grooving one down the middle? I mean, that was – and I'm kind of diverting a little bit here because I'm thinking about it. I mean, he had him fooled on that off-speed stuff. He was on that – he was sped up for the fastball. I was like, don't throw him a fastball. And what's he do? He throws the fastball right down the middle. But anyways –
well, that's funny. I don't know if you guys were, it's made as much news out there, but Tarik Carpenter, 19th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's, I think they said he's got, the best OPS, behind Ohtani and Judge against right-handers. So they're finding some bargains, and they're just people that you don't really ever peg at where they're drafted to come up and be a difference maker.
That's fantastic. I love those feel-good stories. You just never know. You never know how many first round picks. I mean, the very first pick haven't made it in the big leagues. The list is longer, and who hasn't made it than made it at that first pick.
Yeah. And the story was, they said during the COVID year, 2020, when it kind of got wiped out, he was working at Dick's Sporting Goods, and he said, I wasn't a very good employee at the time. So if I didn't make baseball, I don't know what I was going to do. So it's hard to believe 4 years ago, you could have come in and got, some hockey skates or some soccer cleats from him.
Eric mentioned 2012. That was kind of a magical year for the Detroit Tigers. And of course, who did they get shut down? It was over in the World Series. And rocking the long ball in the first game. And that was it, baby. What's it like? What's the atmosphere like now? A rebirth of Tiger baseball. And with this season, this playoff run you're on.
Let's see, it only took you 13 minutes to bring up the 2012 World Series.
It's going to ease you in here, Chris. We want you to come back. We got to be nice.
Right. No, I'll. What's funny is I was at Game 4, and I don't remember if I told you the story when we were in Cancun, but my girlfriend and I were at Game 4 in 2012, and it was kind of a misty, miserable, night to be out in a ball game, and especially if your team was going to get swept on your own home field. And the funny thing was, when it went, our last at bats, I'm sure that whoever was directing the Fox broadcast said, pick me out the most miserable looking fans you can find in Detroit. And my face, and not the girl I was dating at the time, ended up, on across country. And then we get swept, and then it's getting replayed on SportsCenter all next day. So that is my really horrible claim to fame.
I told you, he's good looking guy. Face for television. We got a face for radio and a little show here.
I looked really unhappy because we were really convinced that year that we had finally kind of figured it out. And you went back and you saw all the kind of legendary names we'd had. And we just got off to a bad start. Verlander gave up the 3. I don't know if he gave all 3, but I know that the Kung Fu Panda had 3 homers in Game 1, and that just kind of set the tone, and we were done after that.
So what's it like on the streets of Detroit right now with this team making a run?
It's feeling pretty good because we're in a weird spot. One that's kind of unfamiliar the last decade is that we feel like we've got 2 good teams in the city. I mean, everybody was riding still the high of the Lions, back in the playoffs, and they hadn't hosted a playoff game. They hadn't won a playoff game in 30 odd years. So everybody came into the season with high expectations, and the Tigers just kind of snuck in there. So we're feeling really, really good. And we think it's going to be a nice, kind of home field advantage comes Game 3 and Game 4 this week.
What are you expecting getting back on your home court tomorrow? You get back to Detroit, got the split, Cleveland, good team, great pitching. Didn't have it in the first couple of games there, but what do you expect?
I haven't even heard who's going to be the starter or the opener or anything like that. And boy, I mean,
still not even announced.
Yeah,
that's unknown versus unknown.
Yeah,
they keep it quiet.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, there's that little gimmicky kind of thing that the Tampa Rays did, which all their kind of moves are sometimes feel gimmicky because they're so limited as what they can do. And it feels like we took that blueprint and just ran with it. And the crazy thing is, a lot of these guys that are the middle relievers for us weren't even what you would call successful down in the minors. I mean, they came up from Toledo with 4.5, 5.5 ERAs. And then they come in here and they're the guys that are, counted on and down the 5th and the 6th inning for. So it's crazy. I don't know that I've ever seen anything like it for this long. But it's been fun. And I don't know who's gonna be the hero tomorrow, but I don't know. I'd be remiss there. It looks like
I think they're getting ready for the first game today. The flyovers, the military cruising. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it coming through.
I can hear something. I couldn't tell what it was. Yeah. Yeah,
Were you
surprised
those
bullpen?
Were you surprised they went bullpen game in game 1?
No, because it's worked. I mean, it really has. I think I had read somewhere recently, like in The Athletic or something, that over the last 2 years, if you had pitched 150 innings, the guy with the lowest ERA over those 150 innings in baseball was Tyler Holt.
Wow.
So. Yeah, he's a guy that has no problem starting. He's closed out some of our games, and he was another one, just kind of a reclamation project that didn't really feel like he was gonna maybe be here for long or even be given a pivotal role. And boy, was I ever wrong on that one, because he's been super versatile and someone that we've leaned on quite a bit.
I tell you what, this is one of the things I was talking about, me and Glenn. Matter of fact, when we were doing our morning update during the season, every time we came up to who Detroit was going to play, the starting pitcher was always undecided. We're like, what is going on in Detroit? I mean, we're talking about a month ago, we're saying this. It's like every other start was undecided. Now, in playoff baseball, it's all about the starting pitching, timely hitting, and the defense. How does Detroit piece this together? I mean, you got one starting pitcher in Skubal, and after that, it's kind of like, I mean, do you see them being able to go deep? I mean, I understand you're a fan and you're going to root for them. I get it. But do you see them? I mean, it seems a Herculean task to try to be able to piece together bullpen games for for majority of the starts.
Absolutely. And I mean, all of us as big baseball fans would say it's not sustainable, but they've been doing it for 2 months. So at some point, you can't just say it's a cute little run. And if you don't really have any other choices, I mean, it got us this far. I think that everybody in Detroit says, in AJ, we believe and we trust.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And these guys are, they're kind of playing over their heads. I mean, if you looked at the scouting reports, what ranking they were in the minors or different things like this, it shouldn't make sense. And yet, these guys, when they're handed the ball, they're coming through. So we certainly hope so, because it's a fantastic story. It really is. It's been a lot of fun to watch.
And you know what I love about this too? And it really highlights the importance of having a manager who understands what is going out there, looks with his eye. Look, don't get me wrong. Analytics is here to stay. I get it. But you got to be able to use that analytics in making your decision-making, right? Not it be the foundation, because you got to be able to look out there on the field, see what's going on, know what your players are doing. You got to have communication, right? So it's great to see AJ Hinch. He's leading the charge, so to speak. Of course, players got to go out there and execute.
Yeah. But
it seems like he's pulling the right levers when it comes to winning these ball games. It's great to see.
Eric and Chris, and one of the other things I took note of, when you've got a pitching staff like that, what a better situation could you ask for than to have a manager who knows pitchers?
Yeah.
A catcher.
Yeah,
a catcher.
Absolutely.
I think catchers make the best managers.
Well, they'll be the first ones to tell you that too. They're not shy about it. But yeah, and it's funny too, because a lot of the things they've talked about on Detroit radio here is it's frustrating for the opposing lineups because they don't know who to prepare for and at what point to prepare for. So I think that's been some of the magic. Yeah. And 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 AJ has been probably almost as good when selecting his pinch hitters as he has, to go to the bullpen.
Correct.
That game, Andy Ibanez had struggled mightily in September. He was batting in the 100s, and they brought him in to face a left-hander who he does pretty well against, and he clears the bases, and we end up knocking, Houston out. And same thing with Carpenter. He's still learning to hit the lefties. So as soon as Boyd got out of there, they brought him right in. He ends up being the hero.
You know what? They had taken Cobb off the list, and within the last 3 minutes, here it is again. I don't know if you can hear it on my phone. Cobb is back in. Cobb will start tomorrow. Detroit still at 1-1 in the series, have not announced who will pitch. You mentioned something, righty lefties. How do the Detroit Tigers use analytics, to the best of your knowledge? Is because in San Francisco it became a joke, it became a farce, it became the be all and end all. What about the Detroit Tiger organization? How do they use analytics in a game?
I think it's kind of a happy medium. Like you said, I mean, AJ's kind of, he's a player's coach, and so he trusts, I think, a lot of his hunches.
Mm-hmm.
But I know we'd held on to Shelby Miller, who ultimately ended up getting released, and he had kind of a rough finish for us. But apparently, he was the guy to bring in for a double play ball. So they knew these little intricacies, and at some point, maybe halfway through the season, they decided they wanted to be more aggressive going first to third. And the Tigers, became one of the best teams in all of baseball of always taking that second base when it was given to them. So, yeah, we were pretty reticent here, I would say, in Detroit for a long time to go to that. But I think they've kind of not overdone it. They've embraced it enough where they're able to, take advantage of the pieces we do have in place with that.
Nice. You're lucky, man. This is Eric and I talk about it a lot, that this is the best time of the year. Because I might be going to Mexico where we met, and I might see you in a couple of weeks. I always love November. It's coming up. But you've got, you mentioned off the earlier part of the interview, you got Lions in the NFL who are a resurging team.
Absolutely.
You have a lot of long, lean years there. You got the Detroit Red Wings, a lot of lean years, but you got some major players who've had success in the world of sports right there in your own backyard. It must be a lot of fun being a Detroit fan.
It is. Yeah. And I'm foolishly optimistic, but I think the Wings are going to do pretty well this year. They went on a great run right at the end and just missed out in the last game. But they've got some really good young guys. And of course, anytime you get to see Patrick Kane on a regular basis, that's a pretty nice treat for a hockey fan. So, so it is at a pretty good time, and we just, Michigan just came off of a national championship. They've come back to earth this year, but it's been a fun, probably last 12 months here around Southeast Michigan.
That's awesome.
Nice. Were you, now speaking personally to you, how did you get into baseball? Have you always loved baseball, or did you grow up in Detroit? Kind of just your backstory of how you came up.
Yeah, I'm basically, I kind of grew up right in the middle of Detroit and Ann Arbor, which is where the University of Michigan is. And I think, for a lot of us, the first sport you ever played, whether it was catch with your dad or in the neighborhood, it was probably baseball. You didn't even need a glove or a bat. As long as you had a ball, you could play catch. So I've been a Tiger fan since the late 70s. And it's been kind of nice, just dumb luck or being in the right spot at the right time. I've got to meet a lot of those heroes over the years, the 84 Tigers, Mark Fidrich, some of those guys. So, always baseball's always been my number one love. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
I'm doing the show from Winnipeg today. I'm taking a little break from the Bay Area, and my daughter's back at school. So I'm up here a few weeks with her. Boy, talk about the rivalry. They talk with the Yankees and the Sox, and the Giants had one with the Dodgers for a long time. It's really become a Padre Dodger rivalry now. Our rivalry is more like Colorado and San Francisco. We don't want to talk about it. But were you a fan back in the day when the Blue Jays and the Tigers, given their geographical locations so close to each other, that was a hell of a rivalry?
Yeah, that was 87, and we had to sweep the last 3 games to win the division and get in, and they were all fantastic games. I remember Frank Tanana threw a 1-0 complete game shutout against the Jays. You guys had so much offense there back then.
Bell and Mosby.
Yeah,
Oh, the lineup was stacked, and then some good pitching. Dave Stieb, who's from the Bay Area over in San Jose. Yeah. So I just wondering what it was like being a fan back in that era.
Well, and it was slim pickings for a while because until Leland came in and the Tigers had that kind of, amazing turnaround in 2006, we hadn't been to the playoffs in 19 years. So that was a really, that's going way back in your memories. So it was great. And, the Tigers kind of fell off after that series, after getting by Toronto, and then Toronto was in for a number of good years after that. So we kind of went two different directions.
Wow. It's funny because you talk about those 80s teams. You had Kirk Gibson when his knees were actually intact, huh?
How about that, right?
Yeah. I remember the footage of him making that diving catch out there in left field, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He was a really good player until, again, his knees got shot, and then he's just a totally different type of player.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
Well, with some of these young guys that Detroit has, Eric, you got these young guys. You saw what an aged veteran like he did in Los Angeles. One swing of the bat can make you a legend in the postseason.
Yeah, change the whole World Series. Never batted again the whole time. Didn't need to.
And how about this? I'm kind of putting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit, but if Detroit makes it to the CS, do you see them adjusting the roster, adding someone more, or taking someone off, or you think they're just going to roll with what they have right now?
I mean, what do they say? You gotta dance with who brought you, right? So
yeah, fair enough.
No, there's really nobody I think that was kind of left off this round's roster that would be.
I'm thinking more arms for the simple fact. I think the bullpen's going to be used a lot for the simple fact.
It's taxed already.
Yeah.
The only guy, Cater Montero had some good starts for us, but he's a rookie as well, and it was sort of uneven going down the stretch. So I'm very happy with who we have, and I don't think for me, not that AJ is going to be calling me or anything looking for advice, but I think we just go with who we have, on the roster right now. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Cool.
What else you got, Glenn?
That's about it, man. We've had a half hour, an impromptu show. This one will be rebroadcast in its entirety during our Playoff Sports Talk live tonight. You can join us for that at 8 p.m. We got some good games today. What about the other series before we let you go? Now you're cheering for Detroit, but we got a couple of National League games going today.
Yeah,
I know some of these might be in the books by the time it replays, but for now we're live. Philadelphia Mets, Dodgers, San Diego. Let's look at that. Dodgers have
the
that lineup, but no pitching. San Diego got a little bit of everything. Do you think we could see an upset there?
I do, and maybe it's just my own selfish wants. I'm like most everybody else in the country. As long as it's not a Yankees Dodgers World Series, I think we can all be good with however it plays out.
Yeah,
that's what I predicted. Thanks, Chris.
No, so when the playoffs started, and I really didn't know that the Tigers were going to get in at that point. I was kind of root for a team that has never done it before. So I would have been okay with Milwaukee or like a Seattle or the Padres. But the Padres are just so fun, and they've lived under that shadow of the Dodgers for so long.
Yes.
If it can't be the Tigers, I'd be great with the Padres. But I do have to say that my all-time favorite National League team is the New York Mets. I don't know if it's just the blue and orange like we got here in Detroit. In the 80s when I started collecting baseball cards, I thought I was going to get rich and retire early on my Dwight Gooden and my Darryl Strawberries, and that didn't really happen. So, but I've always liked them. They're a team that always seems to have massive heartbreak the way that they lose. They don't just get eliminated. I mean, they get crushed. So
the Dark Knight. I remember that. Oh,
yeah. Meet the Mets.
So I think the Mets. Everybody's playing everybody even. I mean, don't be surprised to see the Royals take out the Yankees, because it seems like the Yankees get really one-dimensional come playoff time.
Right, and Kansas City's pitching is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
and that's what's gonna in a short series. That's what's gonna pay dividends. Yeah, same here with the Padres. You think the Padres got a little bit of momentum, considering how everything went down in LA. The fans acted like a bunch of jackasses. I think
jackasses.
Look what they did. I mean, you had Machado. That's something you really never saw before, right?
Right.
You never see one thing about Machado. You always thought that guy was more selfish, but he's the one that got the team in the dugout. He pepped them up. It's kind of reminiscent a little bit of different circumstances, but when Hunter Pence got everyone around in the 2012, I know you don't want to hear 2012, but in 2012, Hunter Pence did the same thing. Granted, it was on a different situation, but I think the fans, I'm talking about LA Dodger fans, didn't do any favors for the team by giving that Padre team that motivation to go, okay, you want to see what this is about? Next thing you know, it's 5 more home runs after that.
Yeah. And I think that's huge too, because I think the Padres are finally at a point where they're not intimidated by LA anymore. They know that they are their equal. They've beaten them, and I think that just maybe in the manner that they beat them, and maybe having to play the whole it's us against all the ordinary fans card, that may give them a little bit extra incentive for the rest of the series. And boy, that would be great to see the Dodgers get. As much as I love Ohtani, I think Ohtani's going to get his championship at some point in his career. Just don't get it this year.
Yeah, I hear you. I like it. And the Mets. I'm rooting for the Mets. I thought Philly was, of course, deeper for the simple fact of their lineup, but the Mets, they're again similar to the Detroit Tigers. They just like the Detroit Tigers, man. Right? They just turned it on and getting performance from unlikely. I mean, the Giants had Sean Manaea. He was okay, but I think the way they treated him wasn't it didn't help the situation. He goes to New York and all of a sudden he's the guy's throwing 95 plus. I mean, he's had a great year. Jose Quintana, same damn thing. I mean, it's just, and they're set up because with when they had Kodai go, which I thought was a mistake, but it turned out to be okay. It lengthened that starting rotation, because now with Severino, he got his stuff. Now you're going to have Manaea and Quintana in New York, and I think it sets them up nicely. Again, you got to be that you can't sleep on that Philadelphia Phillies lineup. It's deep, and they can do damage 1 through 9.
Yeah, and so as a baseball fan, I mean, what more do we want than evenly matched, tied series as we go on? I mean, that's a treat for everybody. Let them all go 5.
There you go.
Appreciate you coming on the show. Again, the broadcast is live right at the moment, but maybe you're catching it, the rebroadcast on Giants Playoff Sports Talk Live. Tonight, we'll be on the air at 8 o'clock. Appreciate you coming in on the show. You and I haven't seen each other for quite a while, both in the broadcasting background. We had a chance to meet. We met in the most unlikeliest of places. We had Tommy D from New York covering the Yankees series on the weekend. I met Tom in Cancun. We met in Cancun, Mexico a few years ago, and I'm like, somebody said to me, we talked, I think, briefly, and then Tommy says, yeah, he works for the Detroit Tigers. I'm like, get the hell out of here. And then, of course,
apparently all the best baseball minds are sipping Mai Tais in Mexico, right?
Yeah, usually because we've been eliminated. I got nothing else to watch. Being a Giant fan has not been very lucrative the last few years.
We got really, for a while. Don't hang your head.
Yeah, three World Series, not that bad. And 2012 was a magical season, wasn't it, Eric?
It was.
Eric, you can take us on out of here. Again, Chris, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Maybe we'll get you on.
You guys, thank you.
If you guys advance, be a whole lot of fun.
Yep, thank you so much. Go Tigers.
You betcha. All right, take it easy. Guys, we'll see you tonight after the Padres Dodgers. Should be a lot of fun to talk about. Woo! All right, see you tonight. Woo!
You've been watching Giant Sports Talk Live with Eric and Glenn, a Northern Lights Entertainment Broadcasting production.